It is my great pleasure to introduce two brand new exclusive collaboration kits for Fred Aldous. And that is Ray the Manchester Terrier and then Morus, the tricoloured Pembroke Corgi. Now these kits aren't available directly from TOFT at all, they're only available through Fred Aldous. And in this video I'm going to go through sewing up mainly, so you've got everything you need to put them together, but also just recap techniques like colour change so that you've got everything that you need to crochet these two characters. So this video is just going to give you a few tips and techniques when you are creating Morus and Ray, the two exclusive TOFT x Fred Aldous kits created in collaboration. So the first thing and the most important thing is it is obviously crochet. It's all the double crochet stitch, and we've got lots of other videos on the basics of learning to crochet. Now with Ray and Morus, the thing that they're characterised by is colour changing. So you are using more than one colour at the same time in lots of the different parts. So here I've got Morris's head, for example. You're obviously crocheting in your camel, you're swapping to cream for a few stitches, back to camel, then back to cream again. And in order for those colour changing lines to go in the correct place, the most important thing is to make sure that you are changing colour in the last stitch of the previous colour before you work the first stitch of the next colour. Now that's a very long sentence. I promise you it's simpler than that when you actually see what I mean by that. So what I'm going to do is a line here that says to double crochet to cream. So you go in and do one, and then in that second cream, at the point at which you've got two loops like that, you yarn over and finish that stitch off, bringing in your charcoal yarn. And that means that you've not yet made a stitch in charcoal, but in your last stitch of the cream, you've actually swapped the charcoal in the correct position to then be able to go round that round. So then you're going to double crochet in your charcoal for 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then in the 13th stitch, so you go in, you yarn over to the point where you've got two loops on your hook like this. In the 13th stitch, you drop that back down again, pick up the cream and finish that stitch off. And then you're back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in your cream. Now, just to mention a few of the things here that I'm doing. So this is actually my tracking stitch marker. So the green obviously is not in this design at all. This is just a scrap piece of yarn that I'm using to mark my end of rounds. That means that when I know I get back and I work that stitch that's got that in, I know I've finished a round. Especially important when you are doing designs where your colour changing goes across the round. So you see here I've got my two creams, and obviously I'm working in cream on this side. Important that you know where that end of round is, and I can just pull that out afterwards and it doesn't make a mark or leave a dent in the surface of the fabric. Then the last thing really is to talk a little bit about stranding. So when you are changing those colours, I'm not cutting the yarn every time and then rejoining those colours in. I'm just jumping straight across with these different strands as they go over, as you just saw me do then in the first part of the video. But once you know you've finished with a colour, so my next instruction here is the fact that I'm not going to be doing anything else in my charcoal yarn. You can just break your yarn like that. Obviously use scissors. If you can't do that with your hands like that, obviously use scissors or snips. And you don't need to sew in your ends. You can just tuck those in on the inside. The great thing about this style of crochet is it obviously does have an inside, so you can just tuck them in. So then once you've completed all your parts, with that tracking stitch marker, you can just remove it like that. And then it's absolutely seamless. You can't see where the beginning or the ends of your rounds are. Right, so let's sew up Morus. So you can see me putting together this design. So you've got the body, You've got two limbs. You've got the top ones, which are the ones with more cream on. Then you've got the bottom legs, which are the ones with less cream on the bottom. You've got a head, two ears, and then you'll have two lengths of peony to sew the inside of the ears. So let's start by stuffing the body. And what I've got here in the centre of the body is actually a centraliser. So this is marking the centre of the body. That said, with Morus, it's not really necessary because obviously he's got that colour changing, which means that you can quite clearly see where the front of his body is versus the back. It is the cream that forms his chest that goes onto the front of his body. That's that classic Corgi bib. So I've stuffed the head and I've stuffed just the bottoms of all the legs. So you don't actually put stuffing throughout the whole leg. It's only in that ball piece at the bottom like that. Stuff the body. I'm actually going to remove my centraliser because it's very easy on this one to see, on Morus, to see exactly where the front is. On Ray, it might be a lot more useful because obviously you've got an all black body. So you'll see where to put that in the tip at the top of that section, where to add that marker into your work. It can be something that like a marker like that that's clip on and clip off, or it could be something as simple as a contrasting piece of yarn. So then you will need your wool needle, and this will be strapped inside your kit with a sticker on the inside. So you'll have your metal, nice strong metal wool needle. And first I'm going to gather the front of the face. Then let's sew the head onto the body. So using a long thread, whenever you've made a piece really, would be a tip from me to leave quite a long thread like that on that piece so that you can just use that yarn to sew it together afterwards. If you've already left shorter the ones than that, then don't worry, it's very easy to trim them down. So sew right the way around between the body and the head. Like that. And next, let's sew the legs into place. So front legs first. Fold them flat and sew the top closed. Put it into place. So hold your dog in profile like that. Put the leg right the way up between the body and the head, and then sew across the top the stitches into the head. Right, then what is absolutely unique to Morus is obviously the fact that he is going to be going on his wheels. So we're going to make his wheels separately and then sew those into place. But first I'm going to sew his bottom legs on. Now on a standard Ed's animal, which is the standard form where all the legs are the same shape and all the bodies are the same shape, we would ordinarily sew the legs into a position at that forms a third. So you have a third coming through the bottom of the body like this, and then we sew the legs so that they sit forwards and they splay forwards. Because of Morris's wheels, what we're going to do is actually sew them in a backwards position. So we're still going to use the same theory of them being at angles, but we're going to sew them backwards on the bottom of the body rather than forwards. So following the line of your colour change, and in line with that, we're going to sew the legs on a diagonal, but splaying backwards rather than forwards. So I'm going to sew this ear 3 stitches down from the colour change line, so it's nice and easy to be able to position one side of that ear, and then come up nice and diagonally across the head and just over sew that ear into position along the back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew the peony triangle into place before I do the remaining camel stitches. So using your length of peony, come up and in, and all you need to do is draw a triangle. So we're going to embroider a triangle. First I'll do the outsides, so I know how big it's going to be. Like that, and I'll just keep then sewing along back through that same hole on the inside of the ear. And then just fasten that end off like that. Once you're happy with the position of that ear, then do the same thing on the other side. So ears in place, let's put the nose and the eyes on. So the nose is done using charcoal, so you can just get a break a length off your remaining charcoal yarn. And then Morris has got a nice big nose, so come across the front and basically just continue to draw. Like that. Then using your black eye thread, and that will be a true over-dyed black, so that it is a very black compared to the charcoal, which will have white fibres in. So first get a little bit of stuffing down the wheels. So once you put a little bit of stuffing down, bring the two ends together like that, and then just sew between both pieces. using your charcoal yarn that you've got left. Slip stitch, and I'm going to actually slip stitch into the seam, so it's a nice obvious place to know where you're starting. Chain and slip stitch across to the other side of the inner circle and break your yarn. Then you can sew your ends in afterwards. Then we're going to do that twice more. Obviously you want to divide it into thirds, so don't go halfway. I'm going to go a third of the way around the circle again. And come across the middle to the opposite side. And then using another piece of charcoal length, what I'm going to do is secure them onto the colour change line here between the where the charcoal meets the camel. So I'm just going to position the wheels like that and sew these into place. And if you've chosen a long enough length, actually, you'll be able to crochet with that to the other side. So I'm going to reattach a longer one when I do the other side. Exactly the same thing for the second wheel. So then to do the final harness that goes underneath the back, what I'm going to do is, I'm actually using the thread that I sewed the wheels on with, but if not, just slip stitch into place. And we're going to chain 18. Then slip stitch into the wheel on the other side. So slip stitch into the centre of this wheel over here. And then double crochet right the way back along that chain. So now to sew up Ray the Manchester Terrier, and by and large exactly the same as Morus. So then the thing with Ray is going to be getting that facial expression right. So start by gathering the stitches on the front of the face and fastening that off. Then let's sew the ears in place. So using the thread on the end, gather the stitches on the end of the ear and then bring it through to the back so we can actually sew it into place using it. And we want his ears to come forward like this. So just pinch them like that and position them on the head and then sew along the back first like that. Same on the other side. Right, so ears in place. Let's now sew the nose and those all important characteristic eyebrows. So when it comes to putting the nose in place, where you want to put it is right on the end of the colour changing. So here, like that. And then entirely optional, I've gone for a little muzzle and mouth on Ray. So I've brought the thread up to the centre of the nose, downwards. And then draw a quick triangle. Like that, and then secure that back through. Now, what I'm actually going to do is do the eyes in one go as well. So I'm going to bring that up. So mouth is in place, bring that up and put his eyes in. Now, obviously the black threads are included in the kit in order to sew these eyes in place. You could alternatively use safety eyes if you wanted to, but you'd need to source those separately in order to put them in place. If you did use a safety eye, it would just mean it'd be a bit easier to see that eye on the surface of the fabric. So to sew the eyebrows, exactly the same technique as sewing the eyes and the nose, just a little bit of embroidery. And all I've done is brought a fudge yarn up. So that's the colour that you used for your contrasting in your main crochet of your dog. And just do a couple of stitches like that. And I've done them lower in the front and diagonally rising in the back, just to give him that classic, what I interpret as a slightly grumpy face. But obviously that will really give you a different personality, the angle that you choose to sew these on at. So you could experiment with those being at a different angle if you want to. So just a couple of wraps of that contrasting fudge like that. And that is your Manchester Terrier complete. Just remove that mark, the centre of our body, just like we did with Morus. Remove that. No need to have that marker in place, and you can snip all of those ends and your Manchester Terrier is complete.